I witnessed two pieces of paper placed on the table. One was a divorce form. The other was a letter written like this: To Alex and Emily, I can no longer stay in this house. Please, please live happily. Jennifer. I was devastated and broke down in tears over my wife's disappearance. There was 1-year-old Emily, looking at me with an innocent smile. I buried my own heartache and decided to raise Emily, the daughter left in my care, with all my might. Every year, anonymous birthday gifts arrived for Emily, but Jennifer never returned. However, when Emily turned 18, all the mysteries were finally solved. I am Alex. I'm a man in my late 40s. I live with my nearly 18-year-old daughter, just the two of us. I run a small bakery in my hometown, and Emily helps out in the shop sometimes as a part-time worker. My main job is baking bread. Customer service has been handled for about 10 years by a part-time worker, Mrs. Wilson. We also have several student part-timer workers, including Emily and Mrs. Wilson's son, Chris. Emily and Chris are both high school senior, each attending different schools. They went to the same elementary and junior high schools, and they see each other at the bakery, so they kind of have a brother-sister relationship. When Mrs. Wilson, Chris, Emily, and I are all together, someone looking from the outside might think we're a close-knit family of 4. In fact, I've had customers say that to us, and I've responded, it might look that way, but it's not the case. My wife, Emily's mother, suddenly disappeared when Emily was just over a year old. Jennifer and I met in a college club. We were both mystery novel enthusiasts and belonged to the same mystery book club, but without any real-life mysteries or strange cases to solve. We were drawn to each other in a very ordinary way and started dating. After bookstores, our most frequent date destinations were bakeries. We both loved bread so much that we'd travel far to queue up at famous bakeries. In college, I was in the literature department, vaguely aspiring to be a novelist, but I realized I didn't have much literary talent. During job hunting season, I was in a state of limbo, unsure of what to do, while Jennifer, who was in the nursing department, became busy with the NCLEX. I was left to ponder what I should do next. In the end, unrelated to mysteries, I went to a baking school, and Jennifer graduated from the College of Nursing and started working at a university hospital. Jennifer often said, I'll support you until you can open your own shop, but I try my best not to let it come to that, balancing school and part-time work. We both probably thought we would get married eventually, but I felt I needed to be able to support Jennifer sooner rather than later. Despite her busy schedule with night shifts and me cutting down on sleep to study and work, we both worked hard for our future, even though we couldn't spend as much time together as during our student days. Fortunately, after finishing my specialized training and a few years of apprenticeship, I was able to open my own bakery. Luckily, it was featured in a magazine right from the start, and I had a smooth beginning. Jennifer had reached a position somewhere between mid-level and senior at the hospital. I made Jennifer wait until we were nearly 30, but I finally proposed and we got married without a hitch. Jennifer switched jobs from the university hospital to a local, long-established hospital so she could help out at the bakery. This hospital, Riverside Hospital, located in the heart of the city, had been there for a long time and had many departments like a university hospital. I had been there before for things like colds or tonsillitis. Unlike the university hospital, Riverside Hospital offered quick care for even minor symptoms and had more flexible work schedules. Jennifer started working there part-time. However, that didn't last long, as we were soon blessed with a child, and Jennifer went on maternity leave after a few months of working. Most women working at Riverside Hospital had their babies there, and Jennifer did the same. The day Jennifer went into labor, I closed the bakery temporarily and took her to Riverside Hospital. It seemed somewhat dimmer and quieter than I remembered, but I couldn't afford to dwell on such things, so I sat in the old, faded chair in the hallway, under the dim lights, fervently praying until I heard the baby's first cry. Jennifer safely gave birth to a healthy baby girl. According to the hospital's policy, Jennifer was able to take maternity leave until the day before Emily turned 1. After spending as much time as possible with Emily, Jennifer returned to work. She wanted to return as a full-time employee instead of part-time, and I wholeheartedly supported her decision. At this time, I believed Jennifer wanted to restart her career as a nurse. which she hadn't actively pursued while supporting me. Since my plans for opening a shop were uncertain, she had stayed at the university hospital instead of moving to better opportunities. I wanted my wife, who had been so accommodating to my career, to do as she pleased going forward. However, while Jennifer initially returned to work full of energy, after 3 months, her exhaustion became apparent. I repeatedly told her, "You don't have to work so hard. The bakery is doing well, and even if Riverside Hospital doesn't work out, you have your RN license and can work anywhere. Why not take a break until Emily starts nursery?" But Jennifer just shook her head and didn't take a leave. Every time Jennifer left for work, Emily would cry her heart out every day. I keenly felt how important a mother's presence is to a child. However, I couldn't ignore Jennifer's desire to work. I made an effort to take on more household and child care responsibilities to ease Jennifer's burden. It was about 6 months after Jennifer returned to work when something unbelievable happened. Early one morning, after going to the bakery to prepare dough and returning home before opening, I saw 2 pieces of paper on the table. One was a divorce form. The other was a letter that read, "To Alex and Emily, please forgive my selfishness. I can no longer stay in this house. Please do not try to find me. Please, please live happily. Jennifer." I broke down in tears, overwhelmed with shock. There was Emily, smiling at me without a care in the world. I hugged her while sobbing and blamed myself. It must have been my fault. Lately, I had been so busy that I hadn't been kind to Jennifer. She must have grown tired of me. Unknowingly, I must have ignored or taken Jennifer's feelings for granted. Maybe, just maybe, Jennifer found someone better. I tortured myself with these thoughts, filled with regret and self-reproach. But no matter how hard it was, I knew I had to raise Emily happily. When I looked at Emily's face, unaware of her mother's disappearance, she innocently shouted, "Baba," in joy. Truth is stranger than fiction. I never wanted to experience such a thing firsthand. Mysteries, where a resolution is always waiting, are completely different from real life. I continued crying, believing that the only solution was for Jennifer to return. Later, when I calmed down and looked around the room, Jennifer's belongings had completely vanished. Emily cried every day, missing Jennifer. I couldn't calm my heart in those days, but I knew I had to regain my composure as quickly as possible and focus on raising Emily. Ignoring my own pain, I realized that living each day properly was the best I could do. After much thought, I decided to ask for help from my parents who lived nearby to balance work and child care. I didn't explain everything clearly to my parents. Even so, they sensed something was amiss and helped without pressing me for details. I managed to establish a stable life for the time being, but my inner wounds remained unhealed. On the other hand, Emily seemed to have naturally accepted life without her mother, appearing cheerful. 6 months after Jennifer left, and as Emily's 2nd birthday approached, I reached a certain conclusion: whether to file the divorce papers that Jennifer left. This was a crucial issue, linked to how I should tell Emily about Jennifer, who was still too young to understand. Half a year ago, I thought Jennifer must have found another man, but now, I couldn't believe that she would leave Emily behind, especially after she had cared for her so lovingly. Therefore, I concluded that Jennifer's disappearance must have had a reason other than another man's involvement. I couldn't explain what it was, but if Jennifer had no intention of remarrying, I decided not to file the divorce papers and to tell Emily that her mother was away on work. As Emily passed 2 years old, she would gradually start to understand more details. I thought this would at least prevent her from feeling abandoned by her mother. We celebrated Emily's 2nd birthday with just me and my parents. Along with the cake, I baked special birthday bread and decorated the room brightly. Emily, still not adept at blowing out candles, did it together with Grandma until the end. Grandpa helped her struggle to open the big box with her doll present. During our small but joyful party, the doorbell rang. When I went to answer, it was a delivery person. Inside the not too small, not too big box were a stuffed toy and a storybook. Neither my parents nor I recognized them. After wondering for a while, I finally checked the sender's information. It was anonymous. We belatedly realized the only person who would do this was Jennifer. Why go through all this trouble? Why not come back and celebrate in person? For a moment, anger towards Jennifer welled up in my heart. It was so confusing. But then, a sweet voice brought me back to the moment. "Who's it from?" When Emily asked who the present was from, I had my first chance to give the answer I had decided upon, albeit in an ironically sudden way. "It's a present from Mommy. Mommy is working far away. Even though she's far, she's celebrating with you, Emily." That's nice, isn't it? I'll never forget Emily's face lighting up after I told her that. No matter what circumstances Jennifer had for doing this, I vowed to always tell Emily this story. For her 3rd birthday, educational toys arrived, and for her 4th, a toy instrument. A backpack came well before she started elementary school, and as she grew older, electronic devices and brand clothes for kids arrived every year, dutifully and anonymously as birthday presents. During all this time, Emily grew up believing what I had told her. When asked by her nursery friends, "Does Emily not have a mom?" she would reply, "I do. She's far away, working as a nurse. My mom is amazing," just as I had taught her. When Emily was 8 years old, a mother and her son moved into the vacant house across the street. They were Mrs. Wilson and her son Chris, who still works part-time for me. Mrs. Wilson openly shared with me that she had divorced due to her ex-husband's involvement in a criminal case and had come to start anew as a single mother. Coincidentally, I was looking for a part-time employee at that time. Feeling it was fate, I immediately asked if she would work at the bakery, and she accepted. Chris, who is the same age as Emily, was a very honest, cheerful, and good kid. When Emily innocently asked him, "Is your dad also working far away, Chris?" he pondered for a moment before replying with a smile, "I guess so, but I'm completely happy just having my mom. I don't feel lonely." Emily was awestruck, her mouth agape in admiration. It was after this that Emily unexpectedly said to me, "I'm not lonely even though Mom isn't here." Until then, Emily often asked me when Jennifer would return and if we could call her. I had only been able to give vague answers like, "If you're a good girl, she will," or "It might take a little longer." But such questions gradually diminished. One day, my mother, who looked after Emily while I was at work, said to me, "You should tell her the truth. Emily knows your stories are not true. She's just too kind to ask about it." Emily was almost old enough to enter junior high school. One evening after dinner, I decided to talk to her. "Emily, actually, your mom is." "Dad, I don't want to know. I'm happy now with you, Grandma and Grandpa. I don't want to hear about Mom and ruin that happiness. Mom must be somewhere, right? It would be nice to meet her someday, but not now." Chris said the same thing. I was surprised by Emily's mature attitude. Children grow up faster than I thought, and I learned that Chris, like a big brother, was genuinely concerned about Emily. I felt, perhaps selfishly, that not submitting the divorce papers was the right decision. I thought that if Emily ever met Jennifer, it would be sad if they weren't related by registry. At the same time, Emily's attitude made me hope that I might meet Jennifer again someday. Every birthday, when a present arrived, I felt a mix of confusion and relief. I feared the day the gifts would stop coming. Sometimes, I dreamt a nightmare where Jennifer was gone forever, and the presents stopped, leaving Emily and me in tears. Despite her leaving me, I still loved Jennifer. Mrs. Wilson and I raised Emily and Chris together, helping each other out. For 3 years in junior high school, they were in the same class, which I considered a miraculous fate. During events like parent-teacher conferences and school festivals, where parental participation was necessary, either Mrs. Wilson or I attended, as one of us had to mind the bakery. Both Emily and Chris were happy with this arrangement. Most of the other parents treated us as if we were a couple. Mrs. Wilson and I simply smiled and brushed off any unnecessary comments. As long as Emily and Chris weren't treated strangely at school, we didn't mind what people thought about us and didn't give it much thought. After Emily entered high school, the gifts from Jennifer became book vouchers. "I don't really read books," Emily would grumble. I tried recommending her the mystery novels I used to enjoy, but she didn't seem to find them interesting. I picked up a book Emily had left on the sofa, flipping through it casually. It was the latest installment in a series by an author I used to read all the time. A weight of nostalgia washed over me. It was the newest book I had, but there must be even newer ones in the bookstores now. Since Jennifer left, I had stopped reading novels, partly due to lack of time, but mostly because I no longer found reality in stories where planned plot lines were neatly resolved in the end. If reality were like a mystery novel, the story wouldn't make sense with Jennifer not returning for over a decade. There's no sign of a day when Emily and I can clap our hands and say that all our sadness and suffering were for this ending. So, I have to conclude that novels and reality are indeed different. There are no fairy tales in real life. I closed the novel, placed it on the table, and went to the bakery for the afternoon preparation. That night, as I recall, Mrs. Wilson's gas stove broke or something, and we ended up having dinner together at my place, all four of us. This kind of thing had happened a few times before. During dinner, Chris asked to borrow the novel. At Chris, I only skimmed through it, but it wasn't very interesting. Emily interjected. I chided her gently. Hey, Emily, everyone has their own taste in what they find interesting. Chris, that author, is a big name in detective series featuring police officers. If you like it, I can lend you the older books too. Chris finished the book the next day and came to borrow another. I was so pleased that I ended up giving him all the novels by that author that I had. When I told Emily, she looked up thoughtfully and said, I thought Chris was more into sports, considering he went to high school on a football recommendation, right? When I asked Emily, she replied nonchalantly, Chris wants to be a police officer, but you know, if you have a criminal in the family, you can't become one, right? I think Chris knows that. I was at a loss for words. Mrs. Wilson's ex-husband had been an accountant but was arrested for embezzlement, which led to their divorce and move. I didn't know the details about where or how, but it was a fact that Mrs. Wilson's ex-husband was arrested for a crime. However, my knowledge from reading novels allowed me to respond to Emily like this. Each state in the U.S. has different hiring criteria for police officers, and these standards aren't always made public. For instance, the disqualification reasons for the police officer exam in some states only specify that the applicant themselves must not be involved in a crime. So, it's not entirely accurate to say that Chris doesn't qualify. I understood that it was probably a long shot, but I chose to focus on the hopeful aspect. Wow. So, it's not completely impossible for him to become a police officer. That's great. Hey, can I give all my book vouchers to Chris then? They'd be useful, right? I told her it was okay. Jennifer would have said the same if she were there. I faintly realized that Emily had a crush on Chris and felt happy about it. Emily was about to have her summer break in her senior year of high school. Her birthday is during the summer vacation. Emily finally turned 18. I'm glad she's grown up healthy and strong. On a very hot day, when the bakery was closed, Emily and I went to a nursing home in the next town. Emily's grandpa passed away a few years ago. Her grandma lives in this home. You came to visit, Emily. Alex, is the bakery okay? Yeah, Mom. It's our day off. Are you doing okay? I'm just the same. But how's the bakery doing, Alex? My mother's memory started to fade a bit since my father passed away. She began wandering at night, so we moved her to the nursing home last year. Emily adored her grandma, who had always taken care of her with love. Grandma, I brought you flowers today. You like sunflowers, right? Oh my, they're so big. Did you grow them in science class? In elementary school? Yay, that's right. They grew so tall. I brought 3 of them. Is that so? Is that so? Thank you. Aren't you baking bread today, Emily? Mom, Emily isn't a baker, I am. Grandma, I'm not baking bread today, but I think I'll bake a lot tomorrow. Emily always responded with a smile to her grandma, even when the conversation didn't align or when her grandma occasionally forgot who Emily was. Such kindness might be more from Jennifer's side than mine. Sometimes I feel guilty for getting genuinely angry or correcting my own mother in frustration. I am proud of Emily. She's really grown up. On the way back from the nursing home, Emily told me for the first time that she wanted to become a nurse. I always thought she should follow her own path regarding further education or employment, and since she was in her final half year of high school, I had been waiting quietly for her to bring it up. Chris is aiming for a college that will lead to a career in the police force. He says he wants to become a cop to clear his dad's name. I've been thinking seriously about what I want to do. Then, I realized that maybe I'd be good at the job Mom did, and I don't mind taking care of Grandma at all. Emily and Chris's situations are quite different, but they share common ground. Choosing a profession related to a parent, like Chris, seemed to have a good influence on her. Her decision to become a nurse must be influenced by Jennifer's genes. All right, I'll support you fully. We need to find a good nursing school that suits you, Emily. On our way back, Emily and I stopped by a bookstore, where we coincidentally ran into Mrs. Wilson and Chris. Chris. What a coincidence. I came to buy nursing school entrance exam books. Really? That's great. Let's both do our best. Emily and Chris's conversation filled Mrs. Wilson and me with warmth. The four of us walked home together, smiling in the bright summer twilight. A few days later, on Emily's birthday, the gift from Jennifer did not arrive. Not the next day, not even the following week. Emily tried to show me a bright face, but I could see her smile was strained. I was greatly unsettled inside, but I kept a cheerful front to encourage her. I think she's just busy with a big job and running late. It was the first time in 18 years that this had happened. I wondered if something had happened to Jennifer. She's not the type to forget important things. Maybe she's developed a memory-related illness, like my mother. A month after Emily's birthday, I thought about buying a gift myself and pretending it was from Jennifer. Then, one afternoon, a breaking news story came on TV. Breaking news. The director of Riverside Hospital in S County, S City, has been arrested on suspicion of embezzlement. Riverside Hospital. Wasn't that where Jennifer used to work? It was just near from here. According to the investigation, the director had been paying a certain amount to an S County Council member for years in return for covering up medical errors and tax evasion. It is also suggested that an accountant at the hospital, named Robert Wilson, who was arrested for embezzlement 10 years ago, may have been a scapegoat. That afternoon, all the customers at the bakery talked about Riverside Hospital. Mrs. Wilson and I responded to their stories with empty nods, waiting for the day to end. After closing the bakery, we hurried home, where Emily and an excited Chris were waiting. Mom, Dad didn't embezzle anything. We need to contact him right away. Mrs. Wilson calmly responded. Calm down, Chris. I've always believed that. Rushing now won't change anything. Are you saying you didn't trust your dad, Chris? Let's wait for him to contact us. Hearing this, Chris gradually regained his composure, as Mrs. Wilson advised. Emily and I quietly listened to their conversation. Apparently, Mrs. Wilson's ex-husband had known he was being framed and had asked her to divorce him to protect her. The reason was, ever since Chris was young, he had wanted to become a police officer or an accountant. His dad had said that if Chris chose to be a police officer, his own arrest record would be a hindrance. Chris learned this truth for the first time that night, but being wise and strong-minded, he didn't show any disturbance and calmly accepted the facts. Emily cried in his place. The town was in an uproar for about 2 weeks with media attention, but Chris endured it stoically. When things finally began to quiet down, Mrs. Wilson's ex-husband appeared at their house. After serving a few years in prison, he had been living a quiet life, but he was thrust back into the spotlight as a central figure in the wrongful conviction case. He came to tell Mrs. Wilson and Chris, it may take a few years for the whole truth to come out, but it will happen. After that, let's live together again. That night, Chris declared to his father that he would become a police officer. Mrs. Wilson's ex-husband reassuring Chris that he could become a police officer since there were no criminals in his family. Emily kept repeating to me the story. It's amazing, isn't it? Like something out of a drama. Chris is so lucky. He can achieve his dream. Well, the reason for clearing his dad's name is gone now, but it's still like a movie. I listened to Emily's happy story over and over, nodding each time. I too was amazed and genuinely impressed by the dreamlike resolution in Mrs. Wilson's family's story. But it wasn't just their family. Our own story was about to reach its climactic conclusion. I was doing paperwork for the bakery at home, when the phone rang. Boss, there's a somewhat suspicious customer at the shop. It was a call from one of the part-timer workers. I immediately headed to the bakery. Before even entering, I saw the customer in question. A woman was sitting on the terrace in front of the shop, eating bread and crying incessantly. Despite the good weather, no one else was sitting outside because of her. The part-time worker noticed me and hurried over. I'm grateful for buying lots of bread. but she's been crying like that for over an hour while eating. I told the part-timer to go back inside and approached the woman alone. Ma'am. No, Jennifer. There was no mistaking her. It was Jennifer. She had aged just as I had imagined in my mind, yet she was still beautiful. Jennifer was there. Jennifer, welcome back. Jennifer looked up at me with her face scrunched up in tears, but her mouth was full of bread. I'm home, Alex. I brought Jennifer a fresh iced coffee and sat down opposite her. Are you finished eating? Would you like some more? Jennifer shook her head no. It seemed odd to me that she looked so sad. For my part, I was a bit at a loss for where to begin. I was careful not to ask in a way that might make Jennifer suspicious or drive her away again. The more cautious I tried to be, the deeper the silence grew. Jennifer didn't start talking either, just looked down. After about 10 minutes of silence, I made up my mind to start the conversation. Have you been well? Yes. How about you? And Emily? We're getting by, you know. Jennifer, where? Before I could ask where she had been, Jennifer quickly started talking over me. Your wife and son. Everyone looks so happy. That's great. I didn't come here to disrupt your new family. I missed your bread, and I thought I'd come when your wife wasn't here. But then I started eating, and I couldn't help but cry. I didn't immediately grasp the context of Jennifer's words, but as I kept listening, it began to make sense. I saw you by chance the other day. You were walking happily with your new wife, Emily, and a boy. It was such a bright scene in the sunset. I didn't know whether to feel happy or sad. But I should say congratulations. Jennifer's habit when she lied poorly was to talk rapidly like this. I still remembered it well. Calmly, I said, first, you should say congratulations to Emily. And about what you saw. Yes, Emily's 18 now, right? But she doesn't need me in her life. Maybe it's better not to tell her. I've been sending her presents for 16 years, but it was selfish of me. I thought you and Emily would be waiting, but I understand now that's not the case. Jennifer started to cry again. I couldn't hold back my tears either. Jennifer had intended to come back. I realized waiting for Jennifer had been the right decision. This realization made me feel like my 17 years of patience had been rewarded, and all the tension I had been holding inside me loosened. Crying, I told Jennifer that I had never filed for divorce and had been waiting for her all this time, and that Mrs. Wilson and Chris were not a new family for us. Jennifer broke down crying even more, but then revealed an astonishing mystery from her side. 17 years ago, when she returned to work at Riverside Hospital, Jennifer accidentally overheard a conversation between the director and the hospital's accountant. It was clearly about covering up hospital malpractices and tax evasion. Unable to ignore what she had heard, she later visited the director's office. At first, the director dismissed her concerns as a misunderstanding, but as Jennifer kept coming back, he became irritated and finally threatened her. Do you want to lose your job? If you keep sticking your nose in this, there will be consequences. I don't care if I'm fired. I will make this public. I can't tolerate wrongdoing. Really. You might be okay, but what about your family? Your daughter is just a baby. The director began hinting at retaliation against her family. Jennifer, thinking he wouldn't actually harm her family, decided to inform her colleagues and superiors about the malpractice. But before she could, she was fired from the hospital and started noticing suspicious cars and people following her. Fearing for Maya and Emily's safety, she quietly left our home the next morning. She then moved to a different city, started working at a small clinic, and lived alone. When she saw the news about the accountant being arrested, she felt heartbroken but resigned to the fact that there was nothing she could do. However, she heard rumors that the director's crimes might be exposed soon, and she quietly returned to our town to check on us. That's when she saw Mrs. Wilson, Chris, Emily, and me walking together happily, and shocked, quickly left. After sharing our stories, I decided to ask Jennifer one more question. So, Jennifer, will you come back home with us? If Emily is okay with it, I'd like to live together again. Then, if Emily agrees, we'll welcome you back into our family properly. Prioritizing Emily's feelings, I carefully arranged for Jennifer's return. Both Jennifer and I were nervous, but Emily's first reaction was unexpectedly casual. You're my mom. Wow, that's amazing. So, if I grow up, I can be as beautiful as you. That's great, like something out of a drama. Hey, Mom, I want to be a nurse. You'll teach me everything, right? Jennifer was initially surprised by Emily's straightforward reaction, but soon smiled and replied, I'll teach you everything, Emily. Let's live together from now on. Then Emily said dryly, Not right away. I plan to marry a police officer, so there'll be lots of transfers and moving around. Wait for me until I'm an aunt, okay? I whispered to Jennifer about Chris. Jennifer softly said to me, Thank you for raising such a strong and bright girl. Jennifer came back home, and 4 years later, as Emily had declared, she married Chris and moved out. True to Emily's plan, the young couple moved around a lot. I prayed that Emily's life would continue to flow as smoothly as she planned. But if she ever had an unexpected hurdle or misfortune, I could say, truth is stranger than fiction. But surely, a happier ending than any novel awaits you.